Folks, look at Joseon during the Japanese occupation a century ago. Did you know that right now the same algorithm of exploitation from the Korean Peninsula 100 years ago is playing out again in 2026 North America? Just like the railroads and mining rights back then, Canada's oil sands and energy supply chains are looking for a new master today. Oil has surged past $110. The exchange rate is hitting 1,500 and the stock market is crashing below the 5,000 mark. While the public and the media stare at the Middle East every single day, the real architects are sitting in Beijing and Ottawa. Today, we'll cover the final move Trump is making as he heads to Beijing at the end of March. What if the homeowner or an insider just opens the front door for a thief? That's exactly what's happening. Through the door Mark Carney opened, China and global speculative capital are pouring into Canada. Who's currently sticking a straw into Canada's core resources like oil sands, lithium, and cobalt? The Carney government uses eco-friendliness as a pretext, but in reality, they've opened the gates for Chinese state-owned enterprises to buy up massive stakes in Canadian mines. I'm talking about Larry Fink of BlackRock and Klaus Schwab of the WEF. Carney is using carbon taxes to squeeze Canadian companies into financial distress, setting the stage for global capital and China to go on a bargain shopping spree for premium assets. Their goal is to monopolize global energy through an algorithm called ESG, and Carney is essentially the executioner sent to Canada to run that blueprint. This mirrors the moves of the powers a century ago. Back then, the old guard Washington elites, the same ones Trump loathes today, shouted for an open door policy toward Joseon. In business terms, it was a hostile takeover of premium assets like railroads and mining rights from a platform that could no longer manage itself. Now, they trap domestic companies in a regulatory cage until they wither away, only for Chinese capital and the global cartel to fill that void. Green energy transition is simply the 21st century version of that open door policy. It sells the Canadian public the illusion of clean air while diverting oil meant for the US toward China and global markets. It's the modern day railroad concession. Just like giving away the unsung gold mine 100 years ago, Carney is now handing over Canada's critical mineral rights to Chinese firms under the guise of climate crisis response. Behind the scenes, they're skyrocketing carbon taxes for industries, effectively killing the competitiveness of domestic companies. This leaves a dangerous vacuum for cheap Chinese products and global capital like BlackRock to take over the market. Trump slapping a 25% tariff on Canada isn't about bullying the Canadian people, but rather a direct response to this betrayal. It's a strategic strike to smash the resource extraction system built by Mark Carney and the globalists. Ultimately, it's a warning. Carney, if you're going to hand over oil to China and BlackRock, we're kicking you out of the North American economy. What's happening in Canada right now is an invisible war of attrition and a deadly hybrid war. They are squatting on energy right in America's backyard. Why Canada? The oil reserves in Alberta and Saskatchewan are the third largest in the world, about 170 billion barrels. Without pouring in over 10 million barrels of crude every day, China's 1.4 billion people can't run their factories for a single second. If the Iran crisis escalates and the US shuts down the Middle East checkpoints, what happens to China? Western Canadian oil becomes their only emergency exit to get energy without going through the US Navy-controlled routes. They've already finished the design to flip the pipeline direction, so the black gold from Western Canada heads to Beijing across the Pacific instead of to US refineries. If Canada opens its ports and hands over resource rights, maritime control over the entire Pacific starts to wobble. The moment Canadian crude, the lifeblood of US manufacturing, falls into Chinese hands, Trump's MAGA strategy is shaken to its core. On the stage of ESG and carbon regulation set by Mark Carney, Canadian companies are dying out, effectively turning Canada into China's energy colony. Remember, it's not China is safe because it's collapsing. It's because China is collapsing, the security of Canada and the whole world is in even greater danger. Trump's 25% tariff is a surgical strike designed to cut off the funding for the Ottawa government, which is now deeply entangled with Mark Carney and Chinese capital. And now, Trump has played his final card, the liberation of Alberta. For decades, Alberta has watched its wealth stripped away to fund socialist welfare in the East, programs that are actually used to regulate Alberta itself. When the Carney government issued a death sentence for oil and gas development, Under the guise of carbon taxes, the province finally reached its breaking point. Folks, it's not just Alberta. From Saskatchewan to British Columbia on the Pacific coast, Western Canada is a powder keg ready to blow. By opening BC's ports to Chinese capital, Ottawa has sacrificed the livelihoods of Westerners on the altar of globalism. While BC has traditionally been left-leaning, the situation is shifting rapidly. According to Fox News, they are joining the independence movement because they can no longer tolerate Ottawa's pro-China policies. If Alberta has the resources, BC is the Pacific gate through which they flow, and both are now looking for a way out. In January 2026, Fox News exposed that Alberta's independence leaders met secretly with the Trump administration in Washington to propose a new energy partnership. This is the core of Trump's supply chain liberation operation. If Alberta breaks away, the US completes its energy independence, and if BC joins, China is completely blocked from the Pacific. Trump's message is clear. Carney, if you're going to sell out North American energy to Beijing, we'll stop dealing with Ottawa and deal directly with Alberta. This is China's unrestricted warfare, using MORs and equity acquisitions to seize the energy supply chain, the very jugular of the United States. If Western Canada falls, US security collapses in its own backyard, which is why Trump's 25% tariff is an emergency kill switch to stop this poison from flowing. But there is hope as awakened Canadians take to the streets, choosing to be a blood ally of the US to protect their freedom rather than becoming a Chinese colony. Because of its position, Canada is now mirroring South Korea, trapped in a clash of titans and suffering from internal division. Just as we groaned under foreign exploitation a century ago, Canada and Korea are now the main battlegrounds for this invisible, unrestricted warfare. This is the strongest signal yet that the nation-state platform is beginning to dismantle. When energy sovereignty shifts to China and global cartels, the market reacts first, and the pain we feel is the grinding noise of the board being flipped. You might ask, if there's an unrestricted war, why is Trump heading to Beijing in late March? Fox News sees it clearly. This isn't a handshake, but a trip to collect a letter of surrender. Trump arrives in Beijing, having already choked China's supply lines with the tariff and the Alberta card. He's there to deliver a final warning. Get your hands off Canada and back out of our energy chain, or watch your economy suffer a massive heart attack. This visit is a business liquidation to finalize an orderly exit for American tech and capital. It's less a peace mission and more a confirmation kill to show the winner's dominance. Where is the real information? The only way to protect your assets isn't by obsessing over daily stock fluctuations, but by having the vision to read the flow of this massive war. What are your thoughts on today's video? Let me know in the comments below. In the next video, I'll be back with a specific scenario on how Trump's energy liberation operation will forcibly reshape the semiconductor and battery supply chains in Korea. See you then.